It's time to step into the Coming Out Lounge, a cool, safe space to be true to your sexual self. With your host, Rick Clemens. Rick has helped hundreds of people come out of the closet, and now each week he's bringing you cool insights for loving and accepting yourself, boosting your self-confidence, and living a guilt-free, purpose-filled life on the other side of the closet doors. Cuddle up with yourself and get ready for heartwarming coming out stories, ideas for living authentically, and tips for being fully self-expressed. Now here's your host, Coming Out Coach Rick.
Hey, closet buzzers and closet dwellers. This is it. It's Rick Clemens, me, the coming out guy. And today I want to take us to some place where we get sometimes when we're coming out of the closet. We get in our tunnel vision and we can't seem to see anything other than either the bad or the good about coming out of the closet. But today we're gonna start by looking at a little menage a trois. So I want you to think glam rock, AIDS, and being yourself. And then I want you to imagine that you're being called one of the most iconic queer musicians that's ever come across the face of the planet. In fact, you're fabulous, you're fun, you're willing to put it all out there in your music and in your life. And that is who my guest is today, Tim Cain. He's putting it all out there. And some people are actually even saying he could possibly, him and his band of boys could possibly be the next Hedwig and the Angry Inch. And we're going to be talking to him about his beautiful new project called Tunnelvision, where he literally does lay it all out on the line about him and a relationship that he has with this guy, Troy, and really talks about what it's like to be in this crazy queer pop rock world where he mixes heavy metal and goth with soul and industrial new wave, hip hop, jazz, all that good stuff. I could go on, but I really want to just strap on the headphones, dive right in with Mr. Tim Cain as we talk about Tunnelvision and all the beautiful things he's doing with his band, Boys Entrance. Welcome to the Coming Out Lounge, Tim.
Well, thank you, Rick. That was such a nice introduction.
Hey, you're welcome, man. Well, hey, I'm so glad we connected. And I'm a pretty transparent guy, so I'm going to let our listeners know that you and I are just meeting on this episode right now for the very first time. So we're both kind of flying blind and naked, and we're just going to kind of go wherever things go today. So
sounds good to me.
Hey, it sounds great to me too, Tim. So let's kind of step into, where this whole music thing started. I know most musicians, it wasn't like you wake up and go, okay, tomorrow I'm going to become a musician. Kind of take us into what became Boys Entrance and how Tim Cain suddenly became this guy who really wanted to do some pretty cool stuff in music.
Well, so I've always liked music, and I was always drawn to it. I was especially interested in the Beatles and David Bowie and the Rolling Stones and that whole classic rock period,
right.
But moving into the glam rock period especially. And what happened was I went to college in 1975 to become a directing and playwriting. That was my major.
Okay.
And I wrote my own program. And the program was essentially for like rock musicals. And at that point, nobody had ever they didn't have a program in rock musicals. So I had to go to school and take music theory classes and all of that. And I was taking theater classes at the same time. And I had a car accident in 1977, and it kind of erased a good part of my memory. For a year and a half, I couldn't remember how to read music. The idea of music didn't even register with me anymore in terms of looking at sheet music. I didn't know what it was. Mm-hmm. And so that whole dream of doing rock musicals was deferred for a long time. And flash forward, like in between, I was in a lot of bands. I was always an out musician. And so I just kind of, in 1991, I started the band Boys Entrance, and we were in Chicago for 25 years.
Wow.
And that was great. I mean, we put out 4 albums in my time there. And about 10 years ago, I started working on Tunnelvision, which is the new rock musical.
Right.
And at that point, I didn't even know that it was a musical. I knew I had a title and I had a bunch of songs, and it was kind of a concept album based around sexual obsession. And that's hence the title Tunnelvision.
Right.
And so then I started hearing in the songs a discussion going on. And it started with the song The 13th Step, where there are literally two characters in the song, Tim and Troy. And then there was the song Mr. Sissy. And in the song Mr. Sissy, one of the characters says, criticizes the other and says, "Oh, that's so gay." And the other says, and the singer says, "I know it is, bitch. It was meant to be." So, then I realized, oh, that could be these two people continuing to talk. And so I started working with the songs and splitting them up. And so the end result was, after 10 years, we finished the album Tunnelvision by Boys Entrance. And that's all like me just singing kind of in the first person, not split up with different singers. But in June at Studio 620 in St. Petersburg, Florida, we're going to debut the musical itself. And that's going to be sung by actors, and Boys Entrance is going to be the backing band for the production.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we're very excited about that. I mean, it took me 40 years to actualize that dream of doing rock musicals.
Right. That's awesome. So really, you guys are kind of in your own, this is the Coming Out Lounge, but it's really, you're kind of in your own coming out with this rock musical, even though the stuff's been being worked on for years. To see it actually get to go on stage, this is like a huge coming out process in and of itself.
Oh yeah, because, now it's, the party's always been, the music of Boys Entrance is always directed toward the gay community.
Right.
But what's going to happen now is the community at large is going to be exposed to it. And when I first met with Bob Devin-Jones, the director, to talk about it, I was feeling sheepish about the content, because there's a lot of sexual content in the music. Right. And so I'm thinking, well, I don't know how this is going to go over. And I was feeling sheepish about that. And so I have this meeting with him, and he says, "Oh no, we're going to go all out with this. There's going to be full frontal nudity. There's going to be, it's going to be more outrageous than I ever thought it was going to be." And so I was like, okay, that's going to be fun. I don't know if I can invite my 80-year-old mother.
Right.
But I'm going to.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. I think what I love about this most so far, I mean, there's lots of things, but what I love about this is truly about taking something that's so dear and precious to you and just allowing yourself to be with it and take it to places that you just never know you're going to go. And it is truly like the parallel of coming out of the closet, because you have this beautiful energy about this particular, musical and the music behind it. And it's suddenly becoming its beautiful own thing that's just standing on its own legs. It's about to get up and walk. And I think so often when we are coming out of our closets, whatever those closets are, it's those steps. It's being brave enough to say, okay, we're going to walk. We're going to make that trek into the future life that we want to live. And so I'm just so excited for you, man. This is really, really cool. So I'm curious. So Tunnelvision, was that just always what you thought you would call this? I know it was, an album and stuff first, but was it because of the narrowness of the focus of it? What was the reasoning behind the name Tunnelvision?
It was always going to be the title. I went 9 years ago with my parents to a trip to Hawaii, and I took a photograph of a tunnel going into a mountain. I got at the front of the tour bus, and the guy let me stand there and take a photograph as we were going into the tunnel. And initially I thought that would be the image that I would use for the album cover. And it was, the idea of tunnel vision is the idea of not being able to see anything peripheral. It's only the things that are directly in front of you. And when your mind is occupied with sexual obsession, sex addiction, you're unable to see anything but your objective that's in front of you. And a lot of damage goes on in the wake of that. Mm-hmm. And so that's what the focus of this music in particular. Mm-hmm. It is a gay story, but it's also a universal story, because a lot of people go through just the ups and downs, like, meeting someone you think is attractive and then hoping you can be in a relationship with them. And then you might be in a relationship with them. And then it may turn into something other than what you had hoped it would be. And you go through this roller coaster and then hopefully come out, better on the other side. And so that's kind of the universal journey in this music that anyone could relate to, but then it gets more specific. And I think, I was saying something to someone else the other day that I go to films and I see straight love story and I might have a tearjerker moment or Gone with the Wind or
Right.
anything at all. And we as gay people always transposing ourselves into a straight world and viewing life through their prism.
Yep.
So why is it not possible for straight people to view life through my prism?
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really powerful question.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah, I think it's such a powerful, powerful question because, we often, when we're coming out, underneath it is that question. It's like, can you please just see life through my prism? And I think for most of us as human beings, this is that ultimate question. Can you love me enough? Whatever that kind of love is. It could be love of a friend, of a child, of a parent, whatever it might be, a lover, whatever. But can you love me enough, and especially in this day and age, can you love me enough to just see life through my prism for a moment? Just a moment. Because if you can do it for a moment, you're going to have a much better understanding of who I am and how I see my life. And I'm so glad you said that, Tim, because I think this is the beauty, of art, is that it begins to bring us to the knees of life so we can see things in a different way. Even if that means full frontal nudity on a stage, it's about see life through my prism, because then you can actually see me and I can see you. I think this is where it's really powerful. And I don't really know a whole lot about the performance in the play yet, other than what I've read, but I think this is where you have a huge potential to have great impact in the world by allowing people to see what does this queer life look like, and what does being queer really look like, and how do we move and get around in the world, so to speak. So I have a question about that use of the word queer, because when I got all the facts and stuff prior to the show and all the one sheets and everything about you and the band and everything, and your publicist had used the word iconic queer, what does that word really mean to you, to be queer?
So, in the song Mr. Sissy, which is the first song on the album, the last verse is, I took back the words one at a time. Queer is a theory and faggot divine. Fairy's a favorite, it's fit for a queen. I rendered them harmless and removed all their stings. And so a word is a word is a word, right? A word, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet or as foul, right? And so the truth of that word, I did produce an album called The Queer Punk Folder, which was based on, at the time, there were chat boards. And so there was one on AOL that was called The Queer Punk Folder, which was, a group of people who were talking about gay music, but they were punks. And so that was the focus. And it was the first time I really claimed that word. So, a lot of like Mr. Sissy, that's the same thing. It's like I grew up from the time of 5 being called a sissy and being beaten up. I was beaten up every year from 5 to 17. And so that word sissy, engendered a lot of shame. And fear and anger and all those things. So in the song Mr. Sissy became my signature song, because what I was doing was taking back the words one at a time and not giving them that power over me. So to answer your question, the word queer, in the parlance of movement now is, we have LGBTQ, etc. So like the queer part of it is queer people may be straight people who have dalliances or have interest or have some degree of being allies. people who do not fit the stereotypical norm of heterosexual. Right. And the same thing is true for gay people, that we may fit somewhere on a continuum, but yes, we may not fit neatly in a box. Mm-hmm. And so then so instead of trying to get very specific and check all kinds of boxes, we can check this one that says, I'm something, but I don't identify as straight. I don't identify as gay. I don't identify as bi. I'll just say queer,
Yeah. No, I agree.
But I think it is.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because you and we're not that far apart in age, because if you were entering college in 75, I was entering college in 85. So even in that 10 years, there was so much that happened. But I know how different that word can be perceived depending on the generation. So, we have our elders in our LGBTQ community that a lot of them get very offended by the word queer because they haven't let go of the meaning. They haven't allowed it to be. Now, I know that in the last few years, as LGBT moved to LGBTQ, it's become softer, but I still know a lot of people that, the meaning that gets assigned to that, and justifiably so, because they lived through some of the most hard times in our movement. To be called queer was so demeaning, and to be called fag and all those things. But I think it's really powerful. Your words, first of all, when I heard you first say them, I was just really taken back by them. But it's so powerful when we learn to really understand in ourselves what the meaning of that word is for ourselves, so that we can begin to either own it and really love it, or we can let it go and not let it define us. And I've had a lot of conversations in the last 6 months on this podcast around this sort of stuff, because I've been interviewing a lot of polyamorous people and having those discussions, because we are humans. The way we sift and desire is we have to have some label that we understand. And I think a lot of people are having a hard time with queer. It's like, well, but that doesn't tell me anything. And I'm like, yes, it does. It tells you that this person doesn't really need anything but that one label to say, I'm kind of I can be gay, I can be bi, I can be straight, I can be any of these things. And yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So I'm not telling you have to be okay with that. And if you're having a problem, guess what? That's actually all about you. It has nothing to do with it.
That's your problem. Exactly. And the thing is, you get to define you.
Yes.
We actually incorporated for the band this year, and the corporation's called UBU.
Yeah.
And the BE is voice entrance, but it's UBU. And that's the main thing, is you've got to actualize yourself.
Yes.
And whatever you define yourself and label yourself, or choose not to label yourself, whatever that is, but what the process you just described is one where you're doing some self-actualization and having some introspection and saying, well, what am I? What do I think? What do I feel? And coming to some kind of terms with that, And it may be that at some point somebody blithely defines themselves queer,
right,
and then later finds out, well, I was gay. Maybe they're not at a point where they can say they're gay. Maybe they, never will be.
But I think the thing for people to really get is this continuum. You brought up a couple of times, and you kind of just did it again in what you were just saying, is this sexual orientation. Gender is a different thing, but sexual orientation is there's such a spectrum to it. There's such a continuum to it that, I have been asked, and in fact, I was on stage a week ago. Yeah, I think it was a week ago at a college. And because my background was I was married to a woman, I have 2 kids, I was married for 13 years, yada, yada, yada. And then, boom, I'm quote unquote gay. Well, no, I was always gay. It just had to come bubbling to the surface in the way that I could go, okay, yes, this is my definitive label of choice that I now really understand and I own and I stand in it. And, it's everything to me. It's part of just who I am. It's not the thing that defines me, but it is a definite piece of me. And one of the students said, so, I don't understand. You just, and I just stopped them because I knew where the question was going. They were really struggling to kind of but how could you be that and now you're this? And I said, this is where the spectrum comes in. Just because I say I'm a gay guy, just because my preference is to create a life with a man and to have sexual relations and intimacy with a man, for me as a person, that just helps me say this is kind of where I stand. That does not preclude me that if the moment was right and the stars aligned and I was in an intimate space with another woman, that I might go, I just really love you right now. And I just want to experience whatever we experience with each other, which may mean intercourse. It may not. It may mean some playful, playing with the titties or whatever. But I'm not going to say no because I don't want to stand in that definitive space. To me, that is limiting. And I know a lot of people are going to hear this and go, well, then is he bi? No, I'm just saying I'm very secure in who I am as a sexual being. And I'm okay with that. Now, if you're not, then you need to go figure that out for you.
I think that it's a mistake to think that those realities are rigid.
Yes.
You are always in one place the entirety of your life, or even in the entirety of a day. Mm-hmm. So depending on how rigid and constrained you are, that's also your reality, but it may not be. It's just not the truth of human beings. Right. I mean, Kinsey had the Kinsey scale was 1 to 6, right, and the 1 and 2 were not likely to change, and the 5 and 6 were not likely to change. But that meant that the majority of people were somewhere in between. Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, when I'm at universities and human sexuality classes and stuff talking about this, I really talk about those differences, your biological sex versus your gender identity versus your sexual, your gender expression versus, your sexual orientation. They're very different. And I love playing the scale game with the kids because when we do it, it's interesting to watch them go, well, wait, gender expression. I said, well, and, last week was a perfect example. There was a beautiful young lady sitting right on the front row. She kind of had on like a big old heavy duty flannel shirt. She had a baseball cap on and she had her hair stuck up in the baseball cap. And I used her as an example. I said, if you were to see this person from behind, first glance, based on what she's wearing, I can guarantee you, first glance, I'm not saying you get to stare at her, you get shown a quick picture, a 2-second picture, up on a screen of this person from behind. The assumption I bet 90% of you will make that that's a man because you've been conditioned to flannel shirt, baseball cap guy. But then when you turn around and you see her, you realize she's just expressing herself in her clothing. That doesn't mean that she's gender expressing as a man unless she happens to be a more masculine woman who says, yes, I dress in these kind of clothes all the time. But again, that does not define some of these other things like her sexual orientation or her gender identity or, her biological sex. We've got to be really fluid in how we look at these things. And I think this is really the power of these kind of conversations.
Well, I want to interject one thing, and that's something that I experience regularly. I mean, it's happened to me all the time. I'm a hairy guy. I'm not lithe. I'm not super skinny. I'm kind of built like an Irish workhorse, and I have facial hair, but I have long hair, right. And I stand in front of people, and women and men look at me and use the female pronoun, or they'll say, ma'am, can I help you? Mm-hmm. And then they look at me a second time and they say, I mean, sir, or something like that. Mm-hmm. It happens all the time. Now, what I don't understand, and I don't know, I think that there's why did I start getting beaten up when I was 5 for being a sissy? Mm-hmm. I mean, I hadn't even defined my own sexuality, right. But children around me were defining me. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it is, whether or not people read auras when they look at you and they don't even know it. They just rely on the information that they're gleaning from the unseeable. Right. But it happens to me all the time. And it doesn't matter if I have a beard or not, or whatever the situation is, it happens. And so I think that there's a level of energy that's understood that people react to, that give us information about people.
Right.
I don't know.
Well, no, I think they're
very weird and esoteric.
No, it doesn't sound weird at all, because it's interesting, because I do so much of my work like we're doing it right now. I mean, for those of you listening, Tim and I don't see each other right now. We could have been on a video thing, but we don't typically do video chats when we record these podcasts. And so a lot of my work with clients is done the same way. It's all just via phone. And for the most part, many, many people are like, well, Rick, he sounds like he's a masculine guy. He's got kind of that great voice and da-da-da-da-da. And then suddenly when the moment happens where somebody figures out, oh, wait, this guy, he's gay, it's a double take, because something in their own sensory knowledge has said, if you sound like this, if you talk this way, if your intonations are this way, even if you can't be seen, you must be heterosexual. Mm-hmm. It's just such interesting stuff to watch in the dynamic. I've recently been involved in a training course and continue to be in this training course where we do everything utilizing Zoom, which is a video conferencing thing. So we can see each other. We can see each other on camera. What I find so fascinating is myself and others, but especially myself, looking at people, and I know we all do this when you're in that kind of environment where really the only thing you're getting is a little bit of visual stimulation and auditory stimulation. You can't see the person completely. You can't touch that person. So you're kind of relying on visual and hearing mostly to decipher what this person is like. And it's so fascinating to try to go, okay, so are they gay? Are they straight? Are they not? What's their story? And I saw it happen again. I had a few people when I finally got to the point in the training where we were really opening up and talking about certain things. When I dropped the bomb, the gay bomb, I watched the camera very quickly on some of my fellow classmates, and you could just kind of see that body reaction jump back and like, I didn't expect that. I wasn't ready for that to come, roaring through because, and I'm going to use the name of your musical and everything, because of the tunnel vision that we live in. We see things with what we see,
That's right.
Yeah. So what are you most excited about with tunnel vision really coming to the stage? I mean, if you could say the big hope and dream for it, what would it be?
Oh, well, I mean, I'm very curious as to what it will look like when I see it actually performed and hear people bringing their own interpretations to the songs, and hearing the songs. Like right now, when you listen to a song from it, it's all sung, from the first person. Right. But let's say in the song Devastation Suite or 13th Step, those things they're going to be split up where different lines are taken by different people. And so to see that actualized in front of me is going to be amazing. I think it's going to be very profound for me. Yeah. And then after that, my hope is that it takes off from St. Petersburg, Florida, and goes elsewhere.
Yeah, that would be awesome. What would you like the audience to take away? And I know you haven't seen what it's going to really look like yet, but if you could look into that crystal ball, Tim, and go, okay, when the audience walks away at an evening, what would be like the thing you would love people to walk away with?
I kind of want their jaws to be dropped. I want them to be like blown away that for what they just saw and moved. I mean, it's not, it's one thing to use the nudity or whatever as a calling card or a titillation to get people interested. But beyond that, like my husband's the bass player in the band, and so he's had a long trajectory with these songs, and he would hear different songs separately.
Right.
But it wasn't until we finally finished the record and he sat down with it and read it and listened to it from front to back that he ended up at the end crying. And a number of people have told me that they cried at the end of it. So I think that there's going to be an emotional reaction in the audience. And I'm just really hoping that that propels, like that energy propels it to other stages, and who knows, maybe the silver screen.
There you go. That's awesome. People have asked me similar things when they know I'm getting ready to go speak on stage, and they're like, so what's the thing you want the audience to walk away with? And I always say, whatever they're meant to walk away with. It's not about me. Yes, there's messages and there's lessons and there's stories that I want them to, have a laugh at. And I'm getting ready to go do a story event tomorrow evening in LA. And somebody asked me today, well, what's the thing you want people to really walk away with? And I said exactly what I just said. I want them to walk away with whatever they're meant to walk away with. I know the story I'm telling tomorrow is really funny. And there is a point in the story that they're going to get taken aback by what happens because they do not see it coming. But what I want, if I could say, yes, here's the lesson, is to not rely on having to know the certainty, because it's the surprises of life that make life worth living. That would be the overall message. But that would be putting everybody in the same tunnel vision box of, yes, this is the message Rick wants you to get. That's kind of unfair, because what if somebody doesn't see life that way? They're not going to get that message. So that's why I think it's so beautiful when we have these powerful, empowering ways to bring our craft, our arts to the masses so that they can take away whatever they take away. That's the intention.
Well, the truth of the matter is we have no control over it.
Absolutely.
One way or the other.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
So they will.
So why even try?
Yeah. Well, on my first album, I had a song called What You Believe. Mm-hmm. And the last verse of it is, if you're looking for a meaning or an answer to the song, we could reach an understanding. Chances are we'd both be wrong. Mm. But if you'd whisper your conclusion, I might just go along. It's what you believe.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. You've got some great lyrics, man. I'm so glad I got to get exposed to this and to hear about this. So let's go over the dates again. When does this open in St. Petersburg again?
It opens on June 8th. And awesome. I think it runs through the 18th.
That's awesome.
2 weeks.
Awesome. And the theater that it's at?
Studio 620.
Okay. That's awesome. And I'm going to assume that people are going to be able to get tickets and everything at the theater website and all that good stuff. So we'll have links. Yeah. I've got all the links and everything that will be going up on the show page. I'd love to have you check out Tim's music. And we didn't really get to talk about the band so much, but I know Tunnelvision is kind of the focus of this. So one of the things I always ask Tim as a, queer guy to queer guy, so to speak, which sounds kind of weird because I always want to say queer guy for the straight guy or whatever that show was, but queer guy to queer guy, if you could leave some advice or, just leave a little bit of insight for someone who may just be coming out of the closet, maybe they're out, but they're still getting their feet wet. And I'm not talking just the gay, lesbian, queer closets, but, maybe they're struggling with something else. Maybe they're leaving a marriage that isn't working or whatever it may be. If you could leave a piece of advice for our listeners, what would be something you'd love to leave with them? Maybe it's one of the, again, beautiful lyrics from one of your songs that really drives a point home, but it's your opportunity to do a little more inspiration here.
Well, I think it's important you be you, as I said before, and that no matter, first of all, you can't be anything but you.
Right.
And the other thing is that I've learned is that when I withhold myself from others and the truth of my being from others, then I am denying them the opportunity to grow. And I'm denying myself the opportunity to grow. So I no longer prejudge what it is you need to learn or I need to learn. I just live my truth, and you will learn what it is you were supposed to learn, and I will learn what I'm supposed to learn.
That sounds awesome. I love it. That's a great way to wrap up this short little time that we've had together. I just want to say thanks so much, Tim, for being on the Coming Out Lounge. It's my privilege to get to interview really great people who just showcase what it really means to step out of your closets, to truly be yourself. And again, just thanks for taking time out of your day, Tim, to be here with us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, Closet Dwellers and Coming Out Lounge listeners. I wanted to ask you a question. If you could take stress out of your journey, be more content in who you are, and find ways to do some of the most difficult things that you need to do as you come through the closet doors, would you do it? I bet the answer is yes. Why do I know this? Because I have been getting requests from listeners and clients or prospective clients about finding ways to just address certain things in their coming out journey. Some people don't want to work for a long time, and I totally get that. And that's why I've designed some brand new coming out coaching one-on-one sessions. These are very focused, topic-specific sessions. For example, maybe you're looking at coming out midlife and how do you do it? Could be that you're already out, but you're not completely out and you want to talk about how do I do this and come out at work. Could be that you're having trouble even accepting yourself as a gay person. And might there be a possibility that you're really struggling with your sexuality and your religion? Depending on what you're looking for, I've designed 9 powerful, highly focused one-on-one laser coaching sessions that you can choose from. Each session goes for 90 minutes. We stay specifically focused on the topic at hand. And each of these sessions also includes a copy of my book, Frankly, My Dear, I'm Gay. So now that you've heard about this, how would you like to go check them out? Well, here's how you do this. Go to thecomingoutcoach.com. On that page, you can scroll down. You'll see stuff for the book and for some other offerings, but then you'll see one-on-one coaching sessions. Click on that button, and it will take you to a page that describes each of the 9 offerings that I have. If you happen to be listening to the podcast right now, just look over to the right-hand side of the show page, and you'll see one-on-one coaching sessions right there. Again, just click on that button and go check out these new offerings. So, what do you think? Isn't it about time that you stepped out, you stepped up, and you stepped into resolving whatever the biggest issue is in your coming out journey? I'm Rick Clemens, the Coming Out Coach, and I can't wait to work with you one-on-one.
You've just experienced the Coming Out Lounge. Go online to www.comingoutlounge.com to learn more, and tune in again next week for more stories and tips for being true to yourself.